Sammy!
Ben!
Welcome to the latest edition of the Two Fish at the Table Poker Podcast. I am one of your hosts here, Legend of Ben on PokerStars, Ben.
And I'm Sam, East Coast Sam on PokerStars. OMG, I love Bjork on Party Poker, which I haven't logged into in a couple months now.
Well, because they blocked U.S. free money tables on Party Poker.
Yeah, so...
But anyway, we are here with our latest coverage of the 2005 World Series of Poker Main Event. At the time, a record-setting tournament, 5,619 players, more than double the previous year, which had already set numerous records.
Mm-hmm.
And the top prize going to $7.5 million US.
And the first time that everybody at the final table got to make $1 million, with 10th through 12th place getting $600,000. So a lot of money at the top. And I mean, let's just dive right into it, talking about the coverage.
Well, first and foremost, this bigger field got to enjoy playing at a new casino.
Yeah.
They were, as we saw in 04, too full, overcapacity, even with 2 day one sessions.
Mm-hmm.
They evolved to 4 day one sessions, and they got themselves to the Rio instead of Binions.
Right, exactly.
They did, at the final 3 tables, transition from the Rio to Binions, kind of an historical kind of move, which, again, I guess kind of makes sense. You want to respect history while acknowledging that you're moving on to a location that's going to accommodate such a big field.
Yeah, just imagine, playing 3 tables left at the main event, in the main event, and there's just the wall of champions behind you, and there's a champion still in the field with you. I mean, man, your heartbeat must have been pumping so fast. So
Absolutely.
Clever symbolic move there.
In addition to the new location, we had a few small changes to the tournament, a few chip changes. The $100 chips were changed to a white and black chip. The blue chips were repurposed from 10,000 to 5,000.
Mm-hmm.
And the final chip that was in play in this tournament was the infamous sort of beige, gold-ish kind of $50,000 chip.
Mm-hmm.
That by the end of this tournament was the only color of chip in play. The only time, I think, ever that the chips at the final table were all the same color at the very end.
Yep, and still each player got 10,000 chips to start, which Mike Matusow mentioned in his podcast, sort of like a nice way of keeping track of how many players you knocked out, where you were in the tournament. But we still got that factor, so that was good to keep track of where everybody was.
Absolutely, and when some notable storylines in this main event, we had a lot of top pros make some very impressive deep runs.
Mm-hmm.
We had a couple players who made prominent runs in 04, kind of repeat in 05, making it very far. And as far as the ESPN broadcast side of things, we definitely saw some big changes to the broadcast.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, to begin with, we have new music right at the opening, sort of more dramatic dun-dun-dun-dun-dun, which I always really liked, sort of
Absolutely.
More dramatic, set the score.
Yes.
We have a new green room. There's these weird sort of like blue lights, look like stars that are in the background that Lon and Norm are standing in front of, which I don't really know if that was a great fit. I found it a little distracting, these bright lights right behind the two guys.
I mean, we only actually see that room once the whole episode at the very beginning, so I can it's not that big a deal to me.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like a huge deal or anything. It's just a nitpick, but, it's just a nice, interesting little visual touch. I mean, for the most part, for me, the style of the coverage, how they went to the outer tables, so on, seemed to be pretty similar to the previous year. The interviews where the players are sitting at a poker table, they're riffling chips, cards have been dealt out as though, they just stopped play at a table and now they're just turning to the camera to give an interview. I really like that.
Absolutely. Yeah, this is definitely a bit more of a perfected formula compared to the 04 coverage.
Mm-hmm.
They did add a couple of new elements to the broadcast, though. We did have the best hand I ever played segment, which would often highlight some sort of hand a player had played in a previous year in the coverage, particularly maybe 04, for instance. For instance, Josh Aryeh would talk about a hand he played in the 04 main event and his thought process, and kind of interspersed with clips of what happened in his interview with his thought process.
Yeah, and there's actually a book out with 52 interviews from different players. It's still available on Amazon if you want to buy it. I think it's something like $20.
Yeah.
Doubt it's still in print, but if it's out there, you can go and buy it if you want.
Absolutely. And this year also marked the end of the infamous How to Play Texas Hold'em instruction kind of video.
Exactly.
After being shortened in 04, they figure at this point you probably know more or less what they're talking about when it comes to poker. So they would save on. They probably swapped out that to make room for more advertising, because we had once again floods of advertisement shoehorned into each and every episode.
Yeah, I mean, just the Levitra ads, the car ads.
The beer ads, the Heroes Entertainment ads.
Yeah, I mean, I don't mind stuff like, the beef jerky wild card hand. Like, that's just, you just slip in the product placement and you still keep on with the coverage.
But in this case, we had the degree all-in moments, which...
Oh, yeah.
During one hand of an episode, someone would be all in, they'd be like, he gets the degree check mark for being all in when you're under pressure.
Yeah, I mean, that stuff's okay if you want to say he has the degree check mark, that's fine. It's when they show you the recap of the hand that you just saw in slow motion with that woman's voice.
The all-in moment is brought to you by Degree for Men.
Like, come on.
It's like, I know, it's a little...
Yeah, it's stupid.
And unfortunately not located in the PokerGo archives, there was the infamous Hold'em or Fold'em hands, where we'd see a very abridged version of a hand where one player would be faced with a decision. Mm-hmm. It would then cut to a bunch of guys at a poker table. One guy would excuse himself for a different reason in every single episode. For why he had to go to the fridge. Oh, I heard the dog. Oh, the doorbell was ringing. He'd run to his fridge to get a beer. Chris Ferguson would be shoved inside the fridge, and he'd tell him correctly. It would always be correctly Hold'em or Fold'em. And then we'd see the outcome of the hand, and usually the player would either be right or wrong, and then Norman and Chad would give a super quick, he huffed and puffed and blew the house down, so he folded his hand, or something really quick, and then it'd cut back to Chris in the fridge saying, I got it right again. And every episode, including the circuit episodes and the preliminary events, would have that segment in there. Unfortunately, not a part of the PokerGo.
Segments. I loved those. I mean, again,
that's the kind of ad I'm okay
cool.
with. A cheap laugh here or there. Unfortunately, didn't make the cut to PokerGo.
That's a shame. Yeah. If you have those clips out there, please upload them on YouTube, because that would just be great to see.
Absolutely. And it would usually be, one of the prominent players at the table that was, the reason for them being at the featured table. So it's not like it was just two random schmoes at the table playing a hand. So it was usually, someone like Raymer or Matusow or Ivy or whoever being a part of that hand.
Yeah, and just the visual of just Jesus Ferguson with his sunglasses in the fridge just there is just such a great visual. Oh, man, it's a shame.
Other than that, though, the broadcast is more or less comparable to 2004.
Which isn't a problem.
Not at all. Yeah. Not at all. This main event was contained under 12 episodes. Mm-hmm. We had 4 quote-unquote day one episodes, which is some continuity issues there I'll definitely point out.
Oh, yeah. Okay. I'm glad.
And then for the most part, every other day after that was one episode long, with the exception of day 6 and the final table. Mm-hmm. And that brings you to 12 episodes.
Yeah, it's fine if you want to, break up day one. It's fine if you want to, obviously, toward the end of the coverage, you want to add some more suspense, show some more.
Very similar to 04, the day 6 parts 1 and 2 took us from 3 tables down to 2 tables, and from 2 tables down to the final table, which, again, is something I am 100% behind, just for spacing and the importance of sort of highlighting each key moment as you build up getting down to the final table.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So I think that really brings us into the first episode, which is not only a very funny episode, it's also day 1A, it covers a lot of ground. Really.
Oh, yeah.
Not only do we get the sort of standard split in half, 2 featured tables of a top pro kind of having their ups and downs, we get a lot of enjoyable side characters in the outer tables. And, of course, we get the brand new introduction to this tournament off the top of the episode,
right?
Hyping us up for what's to come.
Yeah, I mean, they keep mentioning right at the start of the episode, maybe a big name can win it, or maybe it's going to be one of these new guys. And I really think this episode does a good job balancing the big names with the sort of quirky characters. Not too many characters that we see, later on in the tournament, but still we get a good balance between the big name pros and shall I say, smaller fish, so to speak. Not to be too mean, but
no.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, the episode opens with highlighting past champions, as is very common. Greg Raymer, Johnny Chan, and Chris Ferguson all get, shown off the top.
Yep.
However, we get the infamous Jennifer Harmon at our feature table, which is actually, I think, that was the first time we really had a female pro kind of highlighted at the feature table during any of this main event coverage.
Yeah, I mean, we had segments with women before, but I don't think anybody started out at the feature table.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And Harmon doesn't have the most smooth day one, to say the least. She ends up chopping the very first hand she plays, so that's still a win technically. So
it's something.
You win like 25 chips, one small blow or something. And then we get some very memorable characters in the outer tables. First and foremost, Mr. Victor Goulding, 90-year-old World War II vet. He gets shown a couple of times in this episode. He's just sort of briefly shown to start off with.
Mm-hmm.
And probably one of my top 3 favorite celebs, Brad Garrett in the outer table versus Mr. Carlos Mortensen, the 01 main event champion. And
talk about a pairing there.
I would pay big bucks to watch those two play for
that'd be
a
great.
long time.
And it seemed like they had a history with each other too. They're like talking to each other, like, "Oh my God, it's you, Carlos." Just funny.
Yeah. Now Brad Garrett will be, pop in and out of the main events. Usually in the early days, of course. It never really made a deep run, but always good to kind of see where that narrative kind of began here in 05.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'd say probably the biggest hand of this episode is Harmon Zeidman.
Corey Zeidman versus Jennifer Harmon, round 1. They would meet off again in 06, I believe, and the full house versus straight flush hand.
Oh my God!
Which again, on day 1, these coolers can happen. It's just kind of nothing you can do about it. However, Zeidman really does not make the best public display of poker gamesmanship.
Oh my God!
With how he played his hand.
Yeah, I mean, on the turn, he's indecisive. He's like, all right, I guess I'll call. And then on the river, I mean, oh my God. Like, that's just a slow roll.
The slow roll.
Flat out slow roll.
The Hollywood. I guess I'd say you do a lot of sightseeing. I mean, it doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, I mean, and Harmon calls him out for it later. And he kind of seems to apologize. It seemed like from his body language, he wasn't really aware of how of a slight that was.
I mean, this was not his first poker rodeo, though. I think he had made a final table prior to this, so it wasn't like he was some complete amateur.
Yeah, that was a slow roll. I mean, I think that was egregious.
And more than just that, I gotta say, I wanted to note the always odd bet sizing on day 1.
Please do, yeah.
So there's a $500 chip bet on the flop. A raise goes to $2,000, and then a $1,000 bet on the turn. I mean, just very odd.
Usually, doesn't Harmon raise after the 1,000 bets to 3K?
Yes, she does, and then he tanks like he's like, oh no, is it ace king? Oh gosh, and then. Obviously, Harmon says, "Oh, I knew you had it, but why would you bet the river if you knew he had it?" Like,
I mean that's just what everyone says.
Mm-hmm. And then we have among the more amusing, funny bust outs on the infamous poker tattoo man. He has a 2005 World of the Poker main event tattoo, which the obvious line is, "I bet this guy spent more time getting this tattoo than he lasted in this tournament." I mean, that's just funny.
Terrific, yeah. And then we mentioned the 90-year-old guy. He winds up getting a penalty for cursing, which, I'm sorry, I just think it's stupid that there is a rule violation for cursing.
I mean, it's dumb, but they have changed it since then. But back then, they were still, the poker etiquette, the poker rules, they were still evolving. This was a whole shift in the poker world.
I know, but come on. Everyone there is older than 21. This is Nevada where, prostitution's legalized. You can bet on whether or not there'll be a nuclear war by the end of the year. Just all sorts of things. Everyone in there is an adult. There's people who are smoking. Mike Matusow said he did crack right before the 01 final table. I mean, come on. You could say the F word at a table, especially if he's 90.
He signs a rule. He signs up for the tournament, knows the rules ahead of time. I mean,
It's just ridiculous.
And the person he's sitting next to, I believe, is like was a poker pro. I think.
Yeah, he got quads in a hand, and it was against Victoria Corin Mitchell.
That's right. She's probably more infamous for her European poker feats than American poker feats. But
yeah,
I thought it was kind of funny that they didn't even know to name drop her at that time because she had not kind of been that sort of prominent poker figure quite yet.
Yeah, and Williamson also pops up in this episode. She was next to Lane Flack when Lane Flack was sick, and he doubles up.
Oh, yes. Rest in peace, Lane Flack.
Yeah.
But he does get some pretty prominent attention for his antics on day one, where he was massively sick, couldn't change his start date. So his plan was he showed up kind of late. He doubled up a couple of times to get enough chips where he could nap for a few hours. And although this episode makes it seem like he was going to leave for the whole day, apparently he does come back later and get even more chips. So he has a very prominent chip stack on day two going forward.
Yeah, I mean, what a trooper. I mean, he just passed away. We still don't know what the cause of death was, but, I mean, seemed to have been very sudden. Everybody in the poker community loved him. He won 6 bracelets. Mm-hmm. Matusow was crying during his stream about him. He seemed like an absolutely great guy, and he does get more coverage later, as we'll be probably talking about.
As is, though, it was definitely, kind of funny to be like, I'm going to bed after I double up here.
Yeah, he just lives.
That's funny. Great. So, it's a good legacy to leave in the 05 main event for sure.
Yeah.
We do get a brief shot of Jennifer Tilly.
Yep.
Another poker celebrity who has definitely kind of kept up in the poker scene for quite a bit. She won the Lays event and, romantically tied to Phil Locke.
Mm-hmm.
Another very prominent talkative poker pro.
Yeah, we get some Shannon Elizabeth in there, who actually makes it to day 2. Right?
I think she's really the only person in the whole episode besides Raymer and Flack to make it to day 2. A little spoiler there, maybe.
Yeah, Lane Flack gets there, and Tiffany Williamson gets there.
Mr. Randy Jensen.
Oh yes.
Again, honestly just a really funny episode. Randy Jensen, known for busting out in the main event in the same 15-minute span every day on day 1, brings a book and just reads it and just goes fold just to survive day 1. He makes a hibernation joke. My pulse is down. We got a good divorce joke from Lon to Norm regarding Randy Jensen during that scene as well.
And then he busts, right? Doesn't he
Well,
bust?
at the end of the episode, he finally goes all in, says the infamous line, "You got kings?" And then Lon's narration sells it. Randy Jensen played a hand, looked up from his book, went all in, and is just lost in the main event on day 1. Unbelievable.
And then Norm goes, maybe next time you should bring a picture book. That's just great.
Oh my god, it's just hilarious. And then, unfortunately, Jen Harmon does bust in a flip.
Yep.
For a very short stack after being crippled by Corey Zeidman. Mm-hmm. And we get a mid-day 1 table switcheroo. Greg Raymer, who had a rough time on defending his title up to that point on day 1, gets a couple big hands and just really accumulates a giant stack for this back half of the episode.
Yeah, I mean, he ends the day with $39K, which massive amount to end day 1 with.
Quadruple the stack.
Yeah.
On the outer tables, we get Chris Ferguson versus Joe Stillman.
Mm-hmm.
Joe Stillman, who will make it fairly deep into this main event. He makes a obnoxious call claiming he's in this tournament for $225. Who cares? Hits his card and then gets rivered for Ferguson to double up. And he goes, no!
Oh my god. Stillman, jeez, oh my god.
Again, probably the poster child for arrogant, sort of obnoxious youngster poker player in this tournament.
Yeah,
he will be rivaled in 06, but for now, that title does belong to him for 05.
Yeah, I mean, I think with Stillman, if you asked a European what their impression of a stereotypical American is, it's Joe Stillman.
Absolutely. One of the running gags in this, again, very comical episode is as Raymer wins hand after hand, Norman Chad continues to increase his expectations for how he thinks Raymer will win the main event. Raymer himself gave himself like a 1 in 1,500 chance to win, so about 3 times the average if you factor out the average person starting out. And then Norman goes to 1 in 500, 1 in 4, 1 in 5, and then finally he's going to win the main event because he just kept hitting hand after hand to accumulate lots of chips.
Yeah, you came close.
We also do get the very first usage of the best hand I ever played segment, covering Josh Ari versus the John Murphy hand, where Ari explains that just why he folded that flush against the full house that John Murphy had. And I think when they usually do a segment like this, it's in place of something like the nuts. They usually don't have both in the same episode.
Yeah, I mean, they show that hand, and then right afterward, Ari busts from the tournament, which is pretty funny. Kind of accidental funny.
And then Lane Flack, I guess after he'd come back from his nap, Helmuth walks over, and Lane Flack kind of gives him this, half, dead stare, half acknowledgement of him talking to him. If you can come back from this, man, then, that's fantastic. And he's just ooh. Okay. Again, this is probably the funniest episode of single episode of the main event, I think. For me, possibly of all time, but definitely.
It's one of the funniest. I mean, there's a difference between funny and epic. Epic can be its own funny, I mean, we're going to get to some epic moments later that I think just make this entire thing.
But I think there's just a lot of really funny moments sprinkled all the whole episode.
Yeah, this is one of the best episodes for a lot of little small funny moments. But later on, we get some episodes that have a few big moments that I think ultimately are funnier than this episode. That's
that's fair. I think there's just a lot of B+ really funny moments, and it adds up. It's just how in a comedy, if you're laughing through the whole time, then that makes it a good comedy. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, that's fair enough. Yeah.
So that was day 1A. 1,800 players entered on the first day. Episode 2 is day 1B, and this is really the Daniel Negraenu show, where according to them, another 1,800 players or so about an even-sized field compared to the first day. And this might actually this is kind of a subcategory for me. It's Top Pro has a miserable first day of the tournament episode, and this is probably my favorite. Top Pro has just the worst day possible, but at least manages to make it through the entire episode, narratively speaking.
But right at the top of this episode is just an incredible hand, Farha versus Hudson.
Oliver Hudson, related to Hollywood actress Kate Hudson.
And I think he's had a career of his own.
I think
not that big, but
yes, but he's hopefully has a better acting career than he does poker career, because we get a full house over full house on the flop, and so on the very first hand, Mr. Sam Farha doubles his chips. Which would be, him winning would be a pattern in this episode, but he becomes a chip leader for at least a few minutes right off the bat.
Gets a big round of applause for it.
A couple of more past champions, of course, make an early appearance here. Chris Moneymaker, Robert Varconi, two very recent winners, obviously, at this point.
Yep, Dan Harrington's here.
We get some very awful bet sizing back on the picture table. A player of aces raises to 1,000 with the blinds 25 and 50. That's a 20x raise.
Yeah.
Sam Farha hits a set, and then against the aces, and then the aces bets 6,000 into 2,000. So basically, Sammy is up to 30,000 on his second hand, and I'd forgotten about this hand of the episode. I didn't realize.
Me too, yeah.
I knew Farha doubled up on the first hand, but I didn't realize he tripled up basically after a couple of hands.
Yeah, it's just this bet sizing. It really just does remind me of Justin Short's whatever this is. I get it; they're amateurs. This is 05. The game hasn't been solved yet, but come on, give it away.
I wish I was there playing.
I would
eat them up for breakfast.
Yeah, I mean, we've never played live, and yet we would probably do pretty well
against these fools. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Men the Master, who had also was in the same episode of Sam Farha in 04, shows up after missing the time on his tournament slip as far as for when the day would begin.
Yeah. And Negraenu was late too, wasn't he?
He was late. He kind of pulled a Phil Hellmuth. I wonder if that was intentional or accidental, but nonetheless, he does arrive and. He plays pocket kings perfectly on his very first hand. So he kind of gets involved, but he loses a quarter of his stack because his opponent just doesn't know when to fold. And again, it would just kind of be the tone of the day. Negraenu plays a hand as well as you can, and still loses the hand.
Yeah, I mean, he had a really rough World Series, this entire World Series in 05. This was his last chance to turn it around, and he just didn't.
And speaking of arriving late, Mr. Phil Hellmuth arrives in his stretch limo, takes his seat late, and does his typical, shaking hands with his tablemates. But he shakes the hand of one guy twice, which is just a micro hilarious moment because that was the first hand he shook actually, and then he goes back and shakes the guy's hand again. Which I don't know, maybe you want to be extra nice to the guy sitting on your left, but
that was an accident.
It was an accident, but it was hilarious. And then of course Norm gets a little. Did he shake his hand twice already? Shake his hand already?
Great, yeah.
And although this episode is labeled by Poker Go as Day 1B, and the next episode is labeled Day 1C, Hellmuth is at the featured table on Day 1C, quote unquote, which makes me think that they just broadcasted the second half of Day 1B as its own episode. Yeah. And this was the first half of Day 1B.
Yeah, I noticed that as well. I was really confused.
It kind of bothered me because the blinds weren't super high, so it wasn't Day 2 or something crazy. But, much as how they split Day 1A's table in half, I guess they just had more. They wanted to get as much of Hellmuth and Negraenu as they possibly could, which
fair enough.
They got some good stuff though, so I don't blame them. But it is misleading with the episode name. Right?
Yeah, of course. That was really confusing when I saw that. Yeah.
And then Negraenu gets a straight against Sam Farha, who makes a flush. We get a third player in the hand of Ace Jack, calling with Ace Jack high on the flop for no reason, just kind of call as unfolds on the turn. Negraenu makes an amazing fold, and again just kind of chipping away down at his chip stack lower and lower. Negraenu shows his montage of him just constantly losing in 05, running bad, playing good. Yeah. He was playing very good in this episode, so you have to wonder if it was just kind of more of the same in the other events.
Yeah, it just, when he finally does shove, he shoves with pocket sixes, which obviously is a great hand when you have literally one chip behind.
One of the funniest all-ins of all time, the swoop move. I'm all in.
Yeah, he shoves with sixes, but he runs into kings and aces, which is just incredible. But
and not only that, he runs into 3 aces when the guy flops an ace, and the guy with kings just keeps betting and calling, even though it's just a terrible, terrible idea to do that.
Yeah, Daniel Negraenu has never been a bad player. I think he just got unlucky this year.
He wins one hand this whole episode. He actually knocks out a player.
Yep.
In a relatively, tier like a sweat situation. The guy makes a flush draw, but it's just a constant decline in Negraenu. He does his best. He plays pretty good. He's entertaining. He's pretty entertaining. He's reading people right.
Of course, yeah.
Sam Farha just kind of keeps putting them all in and he keeps folding correctly, but sadly for Negraenu, he doesn't quite cannot make it to Day 2. He will get some redemption in 06, that's for sure. But in 05, it's just not his year.
Yeah, Harrington, Moneymaker survive. Hellmuth, I guess we could say, quote-unquote, survives, given this continuity error. But yeah, for the pros, Men busts, Negraenu busts, pretty bad episode for the pros.
Yeah. We do get for this episode is the version of the nuts.
Yep.
The Flushies, the Flushie Awards, which I had forgotten that they would come back to later in the tournament. Yeah. We got the Flushies for calling cards, the best fan reaction, use of a seat cover, use of the pocket cam, chip spilling by Hellmuth, which is always hilarious.
Yes.
And then the best fill. Now, I normally love the nuts segments, but this definitely ran kind of long, and I didn't really find much of the awards all that funny.
And the sound mixing was really off for me. I could barely hear things at certain points.
I completely agree.
Yeah.
And one of our favorites from 03-04, Mitchell Dutch Boyd, gets a pretty detailed sort of segment going into his mental health problems, being diagnosed with bipolar type 1. Yeah,
and actually having to be in a mental hospital in Antigua, of all places, for a little while.
I did find it kind of touching that he felt that poker was a refuge for his mind, where he's focused on one thing.
Yeah.
And I do kind of wish that he'd found maybe something else besides poker to be a refuge for his mind. But I guess I'd rather he be playing poker than doing something more dangerous or risky.
Yeah, and after this point, he wins a bracelet in 06. He's won a couple bracelets after that. So it's good to hear that he has turned his life around. I think he's actually a lawyer now. He's sort of like a semi-professional poker player. So luckily, he seems to be in some sort of good health, which is good.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, episode 3 is, again, as we said, Day 1, Super Early, it's Day 1B, Part 2. The blinds are 100 and 200, which is exactly what they were when Negraenu busted. So that should tell you all you need to know about the continuity there. Helmuth is the headline on this table. This table will break once, and he'll be at a new table with new players. And Phil Helmuth, again, a very up and down. Well, starts off slowly down, then goes up, and then down.
Yeah.
And again, Helmuth plays pretty well. I mean, he overplays maybe one or two hands, but he makes the right moves against amateurs and just gets unlucky in key spots.
And then we get one of the most classic Helmuth lines of all time: "I can dodge bullets, baby." I'm supposed to go.
Yes, Casentino pretty much plays to win the minimum from Phil, overbetting on with aces, a full house against Phil's aces up with a king kicker.
Mm-hmm.
Helmuth does make 4 jacks in one hand. He's overly giddy, like more giddy than a top pro should really be about making quads at the main event. We do get some very memorable characters in the outer tables throughout. First and foremost, the tragic story of William Rockwell, which I guess is tragic, but I mean, he was kind of responsible for the accident. So,
come on.
I mean, I'm just saying. I mean, I don't feel that bad for him, and at least he seems to be doing okay with him as far as his daily day-to-day.
Yeah, I mean, we see him win one hand, and whenever it cuts to him, he's just like folding.
He has like 4 chips at any point in the tournament.
Yeah,
is just one of those amateurs that kind of skates by in the day 2, so they can milk a few more minutes out of him for the day 2 episode. We do get some women highlighted in the field: Sadie Violet, Annie Duke, 2 that were kind of the most prominent, along with Kathy Liebert as far as accomplishments in the poker community.
Yep.
And the wife of Robert Varconi, Olga Varconi, who does do pretty well, making a fairly deep run in this tournament in 2005.
Yeah, with her earrings, which were made from, what was it, his cufflinks or something from the bracelet?
Yes, which is very, which is, it's a kind of a nice gesture.
Yeah, it's cute, yeah.
I mean, it's a bracelet. You're allowed to do whatever you want with it.
Yeah.
And, of course, Mr. Barry Paskin, the screaming, I guess, Canadian community with his classic, no, 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 no! Yes! He wins an all-in. And then Norm makes one of the funniest lines that make Lon laugh pretty hard. Sweet memories of my first honeymoon.
a little
adult humor, but you know what? Pretty funny.
Yeah, and we see him throughout the episode. He gets penalized. He talks about Lenny Bruce. He screams. He's screaming that he's staying.
He swears. He puts tape on his mouth to keep himself from swearing. He will be the subject of other issues as far as body odor and his lucky shirt that he does not wash. That his teammates are holding their nose and still under the stank.
So good.
We do get Mr. Adam Schoenfeld, who is just kind of like a nobody pro. Like I mean, I don't think they build up. They make him seem like it's like this big pro, but he has. They mentioned he's entered 24 events in 5 years at the World Series of Poker with 0 cashes.
Yeah.
And he will continue to be at 0 cashes after the main event in 2005.
Yeah, I mean, he was often called, before he finally cashed in the main event, the best player to never cashed in the main event. And, we just don't see enough of him to make a judgment of that, but it is weird how they hype him up like that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We do learn about Helmuth's wife. There is a very funny conversation regarding his wife prescribing him Prozac and then Levitra, and they both end up blushing, which is pretty funny. But it's nice to see that Helmuth has a loving wife and that they have a very strong marriage.
Yeah, I mean, this whole episode, and we're talking about all these other people, but it really is the Phil Helmuth show, this episode. And I might actually take back what I said, I can dodge bullets being his best line, because the's so many great lines that are in this episode.
This guy can't even spell poker.
Oh my God.
Phil Helmuth. Is that Ace King? Is that Ace King?
If it weren't for luck, I'd win a lot more. I mean, come on. That's just, worst. This was about the worst hour of poker I've ever had in my life. Just go on and on.
Helmuth's teammate, Mr. Pittman, he donks off 19,000 chips of King Jack. Helmuth snaps him with Ace King. The guy hits a jack on the river to win a huge pot, crippling Helmuth.
Oh my God.
And Helmuth loses with Ace Queen against pocket sevens. Ace Queen and the sevens holding some very important historical relevance, because that'll be a hand that will haunt Helmuth for years to come.
Yep.
And, they do a good job, again, of mentioning the blinds as they increase.
Yep, they do. They really do.
200, 400, 250, 500. So that's definitely a bit more of a priority in the production, in the broadcast.
Yeah.
Cindy Violette busts just after they mentioned she could be Player of the Year if she wins the main event, which, again, kind of compounds the futility of constantly showing the Player of the Year board.
My God.
Alan Cunningham in first place. Every episode they mention it, still Alan Cunningham. They mention how one or two players could surpass him if they get like third or if they win the whole thing. It doesn't happen.
No.
It's just, you'd think, once that person busts, you can stop mentioning it. No, they got to keep mentioning Toyota. Sorry.
Well, gotta get your product placement somehow.
I suppose.
Gotta make that money.
And the final episode of the Day 1 coverage is the episode 4, Day 1D. It is, for the most part, the Trumper-Lusk show with a small Mike Matusow subplot, and this is definitely a dull episode for me.
There were some good moments. We have throwing cards at a dealer and then F-bombing Gate.
The Matusow subplot is very good, but the feature table is a little bit of a snoozer. It's mostly just Marcel Lusk playing every hand, trying a little too hard to try to outplay the table, it seems like.
Yep.
And it's, compared to the comedy of the last couple episodes, it's really a letdown for me.
Yeah, that's fair enough. Lusk comes in without his suit, which Norm compares to Spider-Man wearing khakis, which I thought was a good gesture. And he was just playing too hard this table.
Marcel Lusk wins the first couple of hands, a lot of bluffing, a lot of just trying to outplay his opponents.
Mm-hmm.
Gavin Smith at one point is shown at the feature table.
Yep.
Rest in peace, Gavin Smith.
Yep.
Matusow is highlighted his story about being in prison, which we talked about a bit last time, about how he knew before the main event was done in 04 that he'd be going to jail in the following year.
Yep. For 6 months on drug charges, which he claims he was set up.
Well, yes, which is the whole point. That's what it's called undercover officer for. Daniel Bernstorff, who will make the final table, does appear once. This is really the only time he's ever relevant in the entire broadcast until his bust hand.
Yeah, I think there's one other hand with where Daneman bluffs him off that we see him.
That's pretty much it.
That's it, yeah. This hand where he shoves all in and Lusk folds, and that's, very small.
Matusow, again, accused of throwing cards at the dealer, avoids a penalty for it, and then gets one anyway when he mouths off the table and the tournament official. He swears in succession, so he gets penalized for each profanity. So it ends up being like a 40-minute penalty, and that's just our first time of Norm saying, "This is the new Mike, same as the old Mike."
Yeah, because he claims that he's turned a new leaf, and the new me is doing good financially and all that, and not so much a new leaf.
And then we do have the inheritance of Bill Brunson's Lucky Casper card protector.
Yep.
We do get a couple of, showing the characters in the outer tables, including a Japanese game show winner and a quote-unquote human calculator.
Yep. Yeah, Tamao Satow, who they say like she doesn't know how to play poker, which is interesting. She apparently changes dresses in the middle of the day too, or something.
Because
she's wearing one set of clothing, then she comes back and we see her later. She's wearing a different set.
And she will win the plushie for best dressed in the finale of the tournament. Honestly, it did just feel like this episode was more about our tables being more entertaining than anything that happened on the feature table for sure.
Yeah, that's fair enough. Yeah.
We did have Marcel Lusk doing his project makeover for Brett Youngblood.
That was cute. I like that.
Matusow returns post penalty, just hopefully, he would survive the day. He would double up on near the end of the episode to get to 20,000.
Yep.
Howard Lederer is shown chipping up. He'll be a prominent feature later on in the tournament.
Mm-hmm.
We got another segment of the best hand I ever played from Mr. Gavin Griffin with a 9-high bluff, which, okay, about the 9-high, we're used to it from Kasuf.
Yeah, he was the youngest bracelet winner, so they probably want to put that in there.
Again, I don't have much to say about the feature table action, honestly. Lusk doesn't last much longer in the tournament, even though he survives day 1.
Yep.
And we do see Glenn Hughes join for all of 4 seconds, doesn't even play the hand. It's just name dropping because he was in the final table last time. Very pointless.
Lon calls him quite a presence at the final table last year.
Yeah, for all of 4 seconds. So again, that kind of concludes the day one action.
Yeah.
A bit of a dull ending for the day one stuff, but at least we get into day two, where we learned that there's 1,900 players left of the original 5,600. So a little over 1/3 of the field.
Mm-hmm.
We do see that Simi Farha had a very profitable day one. He was up to 156,600 chips in second place overall, which while we saw him win a few hands in the first half of his day one, that means he went on an absolute tear throughout the rest of day one, which I would have loved to have seen, but I mean, that's okay, I guess.
And the chip leader, Haken Werstad, who just doesn't have anything going and apparently loses a bunch of chips by the end of the day.
Mm-hmm. Lane Flack is the highlighted pro on the day two table.
Yep.
He has a very strong stack. He ran up to almost 71,000. We do get Paul Darton.
Yep.
Briefly, it was definitely highlighted in 03 at the future table at one point. Gus Hansen out in one hand on day two. Barry Paskin, the crowd finally starts to kind of turn on him.
Yeah.
No longer amused by his antics. They tell him to shut up, and he said, "You shut up. If I play my hand, you play yours."
Which is great. We get a lot of Barbara Enright in this episode as well, which is nice.
Lane Flack is kind of mentioned as a pro that can sometimes go on tilt, kind of a la Mike Matusow. He overplays Queen 6 against a player of Jacks, and sort of the rumblings of a tilt volcano kind of maybe starting.
Yeah.
We get a very bizarre 5-4 versus 8-7 raising show, which is really not something we had ever seen up until this point in the main event.
Yeah.
For the most part, most of the hands are premium cards, with the occasional premium hand versus one garbage hand. But this is two kind of garbagey hands.
Yeah.
Really trying to outplay the other one, which was refreshing. This is kind of the start of maybe what's to come as far as the quality of poker play.
Yeah, it's exciting to see, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Chip Reese, again, rest in peace, Chip Reese, does bust despite having a lot of chips at one point in the tournaments.
Mm-hmm.
Moneymaker beats his sort of benchmark from the year previous, but does bust here on day two.
Yep.
We do get a reference to the crew, which I was surprised by, because if you check the Wikipedia page of Scott Fishman, it says the crew was not referred to as a crew after 04, so, I mean, who knows how accurate that was, really.
Yeah, but this is the last time we'll ever hear from them.
Unfortunately. We do hear a bit more about William Rockwell's arms, is the story of how he lost the use of his arms.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't last much longer after he tells the story, but nonetheless, we do learn about his backstory.
Yep, his foundation no longer exists, which is a shame, but oh well. And Michael Misraki shows up for the first time.
He does?
In this first episode, yeah, it was good to see him. He looks like a member of NSYNC, but,
Tom Sartori, kind of in the music world, so he actually does kind of pop in and out pretty regularly, does make it fairly deep into the tournament, so that was kind of the start of that.
Yeah.
Lane Flack does hit a 2-outer at one point to bust a short stack.
Mm-hmm.
Again, kind of an up and down day for him, but he does make it through the entire episode at the feature table.
Mm-hmm.
We do get Mr. James Pollock, a youngster with a lot of chips who looks just like Chad Pennington from the New York Jets, quarterback from
exactly.
You know that right? We do get Barry Paskin losing his ante. Probably the most upset someone's been over an ante until Ante Gate in 06.
Yeah. Oh my!
I lost my ante because someone told me I was smelling. Tell me the rule about smelling. I don't shower though. I smell like a tiger. Again, he's just a funny nut job. Never will wish it again, but just absolutely fun, absolutely hilarious.
Yeah, it was nice while it lasted.
Again, a lot of notable players are busting.
Mm-hmm.
Marcel Luce, Dan Harrington, Shannon Elizabeth. Barbara Emmerite has an infamous get up to leave, looks at the table again. Oh, wait a minute, I survived. Sit back down. We do get some highlighted featurettes from the 1995 final table, which includes both Enright and Harrington.
Right, yeah.
Which is unfortunate they couldn't have somehow kind of mixed those together, in some way, having them both discuss the same things. But a little bit of a missed opportunity for sure.
Yeah.
Raymer continues his chip climb, just going up and up and up and up. He'll actually begin the next day 10th in chips. So you have to wonder maybe, the reputation of him being the past champion, players trying to bluff him, or maybe he's just playing really well.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of main event champions have talked about how players try to target them the year after they win, so it's probably a little bit of both. Mm-hmm. Good for him. I mean, it's incredible.
And again, a lot of the, sideshow characters are busting in day 2, as is pretty common. Paskin bust, Schoenfeld bust, Rockwell all bust towards the end. And probably one of the funnier jokes, again, of this year is James Pollock. Norm mentions he is soon to be married, and Norm says, "These kids, Lon, you can't talk sense to them."
Yeah, we had a couple pretty good moments in this. Ivy's seen playing a hand, and the player opposite him, his hand is shaking back and forth, and Ivy just folds. Just like, I think that was my favorite moment in this episode.
Again, it's definitely a better episode than Day 1B, but
agreed,
not the height of the comedic stylings of the earlier episodes.
Yeah. Do you notice that when Raymer's shown, I think for the first time, and he wins the hand, he's got 2 cups of soda on the table?
I mean, fossils be thirsty.
It's just weird having 2. Why not just have 1 large cup? Why have 2 small cups?
Maybe they didn't have the bigger size.
But yeah, I mean, this was a pretty enjoyable episode. I mean, for me, not as good as the previous episode. I like the segment, Flack had about being sick.
This is really the only time Lane Flack's ever really highlighted to the extent he was here. He doesn't show up in later main events, so there's no nostalgic factor of him back then.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, it's kind of a good. It was good timing. He died recently, and we get to talk about him.
I think I saw this episode the day after he passed away or something.
Yeah, it was
right afterwards.
It was pretty close timing for me as well.
Yeah, I mean, you can tell he seems, we did talk a little bit about he seemed a little tilty, but he seemed for the most part a nice guy, really talented player.
And definitely like Marcel Lewis, trying to outplay these amateurs, playing the weaker hands, trying to outplay them to really accumulate chips for the nitty-gritty later in the tournament.
And people, just didn't do that. It's good to see somebody take steps away from the status quo and actually try to change the game a little bit, which was cool. Maybe play for the cameras a little bit, be a little bit more entertaining. He just, it really stinks that he passed away. He seemed like a really nice guy.
And he was actually pretty high up there on the all-time bracelet winners list. I think he had 6 bracelets, which not too many people can really claim besides, the greats, Doyle Brunson, Johnny Chan, Helmut Ivy, Negraenu. It's a pretty exclusive club.
Yeah.
Still hence the name back-to-back Flack.
Yeah, I wouldn't be shocked if he makes the Hall of Fame sometime.
I'm sure he will.
He will. Yeah, I think he will. Rest in peace. Yeah.
So I guess moving on to episode 6, Day 3, which, again, I always love these money bubble episodes. It always
there's just natural tension.
As far as the tournament is concerned, they're among my favorites. As far as the new dynamics it creates at all the tables.
Yeah, there's just natural tension there about who's going to make the money, who's not going to make the money. Everybody's playing a little bit differently. We get, for the first time, the player who busts on the bubble gets free entry into next year's main event, which is always nice.
This episode begins with 569 players left, 560 making the money. Howard Lederer highlights the featured table. Mm-hmm. The blinds begin at 1 and 2,000, with the average being around 100,000. Howard starts with looks to be like an average to above average stack.
Yep.
But definitely runs into some choppy waters as the action begins.
Yeah, right off the bat, Enright doubles up through him.
We do get some counting down of the eliminations as we lead into the bubble. Mm-hmm. We get a briefest of flashes of Joe Hashem in the outer tables.
And it's funny, even Norm has a joke, if he makes the money, he can buy a designer t-shirt. Just a little reference there about this player who I'm sure will go nowhere after this.
As we get very close to the bubble, we get the first appearance of Mr. Steve Danneman versus Howard Lederer. Danneman gets criticized for defending or protecting his blind, something that has become very commonplace in modern poker.
Oh, yeah.
Back then, I guess it was less of a normality, or it wasn't considered in the metagame for poker as far as being a valuable option.
It really was you just played premium cards back then. It's just all it seemed.
Exactly. And Lederer gets promptly bluffed by Danneman, and Steve makes a very funny phone call to presumably his half backer, Jerry Ditzel, that he bluffs Howard Lederer, and just kind of like Adam Freeman. would later. He cannot contain his giddiness at making such a great play against the top pro.
Yeah, it's a really cute moment. I like it a
lot. As they're exactly on the bubble, Howard Lederer doubles the short stack at the table.
Yep.
And then Matusow fades a flush draw while all in to double up. And the new Mike, Sims, the old Mike, has some classic trash talk. You had to call me because I want you to put you right to school. This is the new Mike, same as the old Mike.
Great.
Mr. Carl Yaborn doubles the short stacks and around the table celebrate. We get to see all the shorts of stacks holding their little nubs, a few chips here and there. Happy to making it to the money. Always, I'd be thrilled if I was in that spot.
Oh, of course, yeah.
James Pollock, again, this young kid, kind of Chad Pennington lookalike, mentions how he had $7 in his bank account before the tournament, and naturally guaranteed to greatly increase that amount. Adam Friedman supposedly bluffs Sam Farha, and then runs over to his dad to celebrate in his goodiness. Oh, wow, what a hand. And then his dad just has this empty stare. It's just like...
We love you, Adam.
And so, as per usual, once the money bubble bursts, the short stacks start going all in. Mm-hmm. The number of players pretty dramatically drops. So a lot of players are eager to get the money in. John Juanda hits a miracle 2-outer against Mr. Paul Darton to double up and just takes the most casual of sips of his beverage.
Yep.
Again, very good stuff when you're comparing, pros' sort of composed reactions versus these young kids that just cannot contain their giddiness.
Yeah, it's a great foil. And yet, we mentioned that, and yet Lederer just gets more and more exasperated as the episode goes on. He's complaining at one point, if I ever put a chip in the pot, they made me defend it every hand.
My whole stack. But you know what, Howard, you put in 20,000 chips of Queen 4 suited.
Exactly,
I mean, come on. But finally, Lederer breaks his day 3 stroke of bad luck. He doubles up against Denneman with aces against Denneman's King 5.
Yep.
And Lederer does then has a bit to discuss his main event in 1987, the only real time he had any major success. He did run pretty deep in 03 though. So,
yeah.
In 05 he again makes the money and makes it fairly deep. So again, definitely finding some success against all these new amateurs for sure.
Yeah, I mean, that segment, he's just, whining about, the times are changing, and I have fewer chances to win, while, you just made the money, and you ran deep in 03. I mean, dude, come on.
Exactly. Mike Matusow plays reporter on the sidelines, saying he has accumulated 500,000 chips, which, again, he was definitely operating at another level compared to the field. If you compare both his success in 04 and 05, he was definitely... finding ways to manipulate these amateurs to making these deep runs. Yeah,
I mean, maybe not the best player in the world like he claims that he was back then, but yeah, I mean, we gotta give credit where credit is due. Mike really was a great player back then.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Lane Flack, again shown with a monster stack chip numeric-wise. Lots of the lowest denomination chips, which, again, I would love to have a big stack of chips in front of me in a tournament. I don't care if they're the lowest denomination. Nowadays, they bring in the large chip denominations way too early, if you ask me. So I'm all for even I would just be fun to be able to have that in front of me.
Yeah, it's just such a good intimidation tactic to put out, a big stack of chips rather than just one small.
Exactly. Samar Joe Stillman being very cocky and arrogant and rude. Luckily, he will get his comeuppance very shortly, but nonetheless, this guy.
What a jackass!
I know, right?
I'm sorry.
Put the Red Bull down, man.
Oh God.
Brad Kondracki, pretty much again the only time he'll be featured up until the final table when he busts.
Yep.
Wins a huge hand against Kelly Kim, a future November 9er.
Yeah, an 8th place finisher versus an 8th place finisher.
I know, who would have thought?
Pretty cute, I like that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Greg Raymer again accumulating a monster stack. Olga Varconi continuing to show her in her deep run. Very impressive stuff. We do get the segment of the nuts, where we get all the amusing sounds of the players, sort of noises they make while they're playing.
Yeah, just they said it was a symphony of sights and sounds of this incredible event.
Kind of a throwaway.
Kind of just a throwaway.
It's filler beyond all throw. Like, show me some good golf bets or something. Those were fun. Come on.
Yeah, we do get the line from Norm saying Phil Hellmuth completes me, which might be worth it just for that segment.
Absolutely. Sam Farha goes all in very humorous fashion.
He gets runner flush.
He makes a great line where his opponent has queens. He has ace queen, and there's no more queen in the deck. He has 3 aces of his favorites. Again, always kind of the reverse math nonsense. That's just kind of pretty funny.
Terrific, yeah. What a player.
Olga Varkoni, unfortunately, gets very unlucky, busting a ace king versus ace 8. Still a very impressive run for what was, I presume, her first main event.
Yeah, I think so.
Very impressive stuff, though. Mr. Grolemont at the future table here with Joe Beavers and Howard Lederer, who went through an up and down sort of journey here.
Yeah.
And then at the outer tables, we get a hilarious room-wide moment where Greg Raymer moves to Mike Matusow's table,
yes.
a table already full of chips, and Matusow gives up this sort of fake crowd-hearing laugh. Ah ha ha. Unfortunately, it doesn't seem like they were together for very long because it must have been towards the end of day 3 because
we don't see any
tables are always breaking really quickly on day 3 anyway.
Yeah, it's a shame. I would have liked to have seen something, but we don't see any hands. So.
Adam Friedman versus Shane Bartholomew, the infamous second nut flush versus nut flush freakout.
Just seeing that now, I mean, Adam Friedman's had a great career since then. He's one of the best mixed game players of all time.
Mixed game, limit game, he's
one of the best.
A couple bracelets, he's made a couple other runs in the main event that were impressive.
Yeah.
But he was, again, only 23 at this point, a young kid. So
yeah, I know. It's just
if the same guy who can barely contain his giddiness at bluffing Sam Farha to his dad is going to freak out when he makes a bad call, even though we didn't see the action as far as the bet sizing, how much into the pot. So I feel like in a nutshell, not a nutshell, in isolation, I think it was probably the right call.
Yeah, he had the second nuts.
And so,
come on, you got to call.
Friedman, to his credit, doesn't make it into the 43rd place, so he didn't, tilt off the rest after this hand was completed.
Yeah, I think my favorite part of that whole exchange is not actually in the exchange. It's later on when he shows up at the feature table with Mike, and there's a guy sitting next to him. He's talking to Mike, and he points at Friedman, and he goes, he had the biggest meltdown of the tournament later. And Nassau just goes, Hellmuth? Not as a joke or anything. He just thought, Hellmuth.
Absolutely. And then the last part of this episode actually highlights a common occurrence in the whole main event is they will say, new to our table is a Mr. blah, blah, blah. Yep. And he'll play the very first hand after they show him, and he'll usually bust in that hand. So it's very weird how they would handle that, because you'd think they'd want to not be so repetitive in that sort of
Yeah, they do that
move.
A lot.
It's, again, it's some nobody. It doesn't really matter, but it is unusual that they continually do that over and over.
Yeah, I guess they're trying to make tension, maybe make you believe for a second that this guy's going to matter. I don't know. Weird.
And then the prototypical ending montage of final bust-outs, and as they concludes, Farha out, Flack out, Enright out. 4 women at this point are noted to be still in.
Yep.
And Greg Raymer, the chip leader, with 185 players left, inconceivably, which is, again, very impressive. And day 4, just going right into it, day 4 with 185 left, they play down to 58 players, and this is 100% the Mike Matusow featured table show.
Yep, we get a little bit of Andy Black in the opening montage, but it's Mike all the way through.
A lot of the chip leaders at this point in the tournament, Raymer, Ivy, Matusow, all of monster stacks, all very, even in 05, very well-known pros, which is, again, very exciting. You want to see these guys make it pretty far, and we have not just one, we have 3 huge names with a lot of chips, and most importantly, making it deep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Unfortunately, Dutch Boyd, kind of under the radar, kind of finally goes busto in day 4.
Yep.
Andy Black at the feature table as well. Not in the coverage a ton, but he does have a lot of table talk 3-handed, which is kind of a no-no.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that was weird, wasn't it?
Yeah, and particularly since he is a part of a lot of like top 5 poker etiquette videos on YouTube. Like there was a hand he was involved with where someone was trying to talk about their hand 3-way, and he was making a big to do about it, which I guess maybe he learned from this experience.
Yeah, perhaps.
How much of a problem that was.
Yeah, I mean that was really weird seeing that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
We do get let's see the Humphreys with Phil Ivey, Rip Pat Humphrey, talking about how they'd had health issues leading up to the main event in 05, but they managed to make it out nonetheless.
And Ivey's apparently told on camera for the first time about their health problems. His response is, "Wow, I didn't know that." Just like so monotone. I'm sorry, I laughed really hard when I saw that. I'm sorry.
Our Chad Pennington lookalike, Mr. James Pollock, bust to John Kalmar. Yeah. Which I think they misspelled his last name.
They did. They spelled it with an E.
He'll be a final tableist in 07, and he busts Pollock, who runs out of the casino holding a few fat stacks of cash. As is my school, my car, my wedding, everything is like, that's not going to cover the wedding. Adam Friedman and Tom Sartori join the feature table with Matusow. Mm-hmm. Matusow wins a huge hand off of some fool of 5-3.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're gonna play against Mike Matusow, don't go into the duel of 5-3. That's the lesson.
Pretty much, yeah.
Joe Stillman gets lucky against Shane Bartholomew, and has more cause to be more loud, obnoxious, and then rant about bowling.
Oh my God, his segment where he's like, "I shoot 300, it's no big deal." Like, oh my God.
Howard Lederer ends up going busto from John Jawanda. Mm-hmm. Part of a table that had a lot of chips and a lot of top pros. Jawanda, Ivy, Lederer.
Crazy stacked table.
I know. Steve Danneman, the infamous, bring out the payout charts before he goes all in. He gets a lot of. He's probably the most focused on of the final table besides Matusow in the entire tournament.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
We do learn that he's an average Joe. He has a home game, and he's the 5th or 6th best player out of 10 players at his home game. It's a pretty funny line.
Yeah, and he just seems like a really nice guy. His segment where he's like, you get up in the morning, everything else is extra credit. Like
superstitious. Superstitious, funny guy. He keeps laughing in the middle of the hand, which is hilarious. And luckily, the laugh did not end up like being a tell or something that would have prevented him from being more himself at the table or anything.
Yeah.
Always good stuff.
He runs out of underwear,
This episode actually has a lot of what I like to call round 2 hands, where the same 2 players square off again, and oftentimes with the same outcome. So Joe Stillman against Bartholomew. Once again, Stillman wins, and Bartholomew gets busto in 81st place. When you're up against someone, some rude, obnoxious guy, it's just kind of frustrating when you just can't.
Oh, absolutely! Oh my God, the worst thing.
Tiffany Williamson again shown a little bit more, kind of being one of the last few women in the field. Mm-hmm. Raymer again began in the chip lead, just chipping down over the course of the day, not having a good go of it.
Yeah, luckily he had enough chips to hang in there.
But... Exactly. Matusow continuing his run on the feature table. He loses a flip with queens against Ace King, but then he does give a great line to Mr. Christensen. Kitty Dame is down the street. Down that way.
Such a great line.
Down that way. Matusow, Danneman doubles up again against Rod Partley Jr., another guy who is a chip leader around this time of the tournament.
Yeah, it's just amazing. I mean, I've been tracking who's the chip leader at the start of the day, just hoping that maybe one of them will go deep. They never do. It's
like deep. Well, this is obviously the final 100 of a 600 person tournament, nothing to sneeze at. But
final 3
I mean, if I had a big stack like that, I would protect it like nobody's business.
Absolutely, yeah.
I mean, I don't bluff. I'm not a very balanced player. Mm-hmm. So if I had a lot of chips, I would normally not be in the spots to be a super chip leader because I don't play enough hands aggressively enough. But if I somehow did, I would just make sure I had the nuts every time.
Of course. Wait for it.
I mean, it's baffling how. I mean, I guess with these crazy bet sizings, the pots get artificially big so quickly.
Yeah, I mean that has to be it. I don't think there's any other explanation. Mm-hmm. Or just, it's just
this episode of the Nuts does talk about the diversity of the field, using clips from both 04 and 05 into it. Yeah. So it's kind of a little artificial there. You can't have that from us. We're watching these. We're analyzing this too closely to
we do get our first appearance of Ozzy, oi, 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 oi. Which will be a frequent refrain throughout the event.
Absolutely. as the blinds increase more and more. Matusow, again, he has like 2 million chips, and the blinds are 6K and 12K. That's a lot of freaking chips. Like
crazy.
And it's funny, Matusow is among the chip leaders throughout the rest of the tournament. Like once he gets up to that 500,000, from that point on, he's among the leaders. But he kind of hits a curve where the curve kind of slows down,
right?
Because he's chip leader starting into the next episode or two, and then he doesn't really quite continue that climb as high as you might think. How he was playing up to that point.
I mean, he claims that he hadn't won a coin flip in 2 years. When he finally wins a coin flip, maybe that had something to do with it. But yeah, you're right.
Matusow does kind of misplay pocket tens against a Mr. Marks,
mm-hmm.
but one of the funniest lines by a player. Marks flops a full house and just turns to the guy and is like, "Good flop." Yeah, and then the fourth time says, "Yeah, it's a good flop when you flop the nuts." Matusow, of course, pays off a big stack of chips to Marks here. And he's only real missed up the whole episode, really.
Yeah.
And then Tiffany Williamson hits a miracle ace to double up from 1 million to 2 million.
Yep.
A chip stack she will not hold on to for the rest of the tournament.
Nope.
Not even close. Matusow does play a flip where it's kind of a weighted coin flip to end his day on a high note.
Yep. First time in 2 years, I don't believe it.
And then, I guess we'll just keep rolling here. Day 5, episode 8, day 5, we play from 58 players at the Rio down to the final 27 who will move from the Rio to Binions.
Mm-hmm.
And here we have Greg Raymer returning back to the featured table.
Yep.
Which, actually, you don't really see too often, someone being at the featured table once early on in the tournament and then coming all the way back. They don't usually make that full circle, but they did this time.
Yep.
And Raymer, below average to start this episode, does hit a big hand against Sartori.
Yep.
Chipping up a little bit. We do, at this point, this is really where we get a chance to spend a lot more time with the last bunch of players that will make it throughout the rest of the tournament.
Yep. I mean, we see Hiram Cantor for the first time. We get Michael Kessler, quite a bit of Michael Kessler throughout this episode.
Bernard Lee
from
Wayland, Massachusetts, is almost our neighbor at this point, basically.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah. Yeah, and we start to get a bit more of Hashem in this episode, finally.
Mm-hmm.
Which is, day 5, and we're finally getting the chip for the guy who's going to win the whole thing.
We do learn some more about Tom Sartori, his background in music. They actually got some music video footage for that segment, which is actually pretty surprising. You don't normally see that kind of spillover. We saw only a little bit of Rounders, for instance, in 04 or 03. And so that was kind of a nice little Easter egg of sorts.
Yeah, it was nice.
Mike Matusow makes a supposedly good but bad call of King 8 due to the pot odds, wins the hand on a lucky run. I'm a superstar!
Yeah.
And he gives probably the most famous Mike Matusow song. Poker, poker, it's all skill. Start with the worst hand and go uphill. Our favorite person to hate, Mr. Joe Stillman, makes a horrible play with deuces against Michael Kessler. He makes a big raise of deuces, and then goes all in on an ace-high board, and then complains when Kessler has an ace. What a jackass. So if he had a better hand, would you have been happier? Or if he had ace king?
He's just upset that he lost, that's why.
He gets 50th points, which is, again, a very healthy payout at this point. But nonetheless, the field just got a lot quieter at this point.
Oh my god, and nicer.
Greg Raymer then busts a very nice firefighter, Mr. Patrick Hayden.
Yep.
He had a lot of chips actually earlier in the episode if you kind of look at his stack. And then he was down to 4 chips by the time he went out, so it's too bad we couldn't have seen what would have let that downfall. But nonetheless, he goes out. Again, Raymer mentioned how he gave himself a 1 in 40 chance to win the whole thing, which I presume was filmed before this day, which means he gave himself a slightly better than average chance of winning, which I think is a little rough. I think he could have been a little bit nicer to himself and said maybe 1 in 25 chance.
Yeah, I mean, he said right before the 04 event that he gave himself a 1 in 1,000 chance to win. That was a field of 2,500. So he's
So the first half is Raymer kind of finding some grounds here.
Mm-hmm.
Sean Shay Khan, again a very controversial but amusing figure in the poker community.
Yeah,
he plays a very, very lengthy, long hand of Tiffany Williamson. Khan of aces, Williamson considering going all in of King Jack suited. And just the interactions between her and the table for the next few minutes is just gold.
I mean, she gets up at one point and walks off and takes out her cell phone, which she completely justifiably calls out, which is fair.
I missed the cell phone. I thought she was talking to a rail or something. I must have missed.
I think she reached down to her pocket and she was taking out a cell phone.
Huh. And then Shakan gives the most polite response that, "Hey, I object. You can't do that, lady."
Yeah. That's fair.
She ends up taking the maximum amount of time to think about this. Meanwhile, while that hand is going on, a player actually goes bust. Adam Friedman busts out while she's pondering and tanking. And I sort of noted this. This whole entire hand takes up 4 minutes of the whole episode.
Yeah.
Which I think is among the longer hands time-wise that we had seen up to this point.
Yeah, I mean, there have been hands before where deliberations have gone on for 10 minutes and they cut it down to just 1 minute.
This lasted 4 minutes.
This lasted 4, so imagine how much longer it could have been there.
Obviously, we will see very lengthy hands later on in future years in different styles of episodes, but nonetheless, it's worth noting. And so Sean Shakan gets pissed at Williamson for being slow, and then the next hand that is shown is Raymer against Williamson. Raymer goes all in. She asks for a count. Raymer gives the exact amount of chips he has, and she still asks for a count. And then she gets defensive when someone says, like he told her, like you were told how much you had. Like why you take?
She calls the clock on her right after she asked that, which is just crazy.
And then she ends up overplaying Ace Jack with against Raymer's Kings. Raymer had 1.3 million chips, and she ends up calling up Ace Jack. And Raymer survives, getting way up there in the chip counts. And of course, Michelle. I'm sorry, Michelle. But I'm definitely Michelle now. Tiffany Williamson ends up losing a lot of chips there.
Yeah, still alive at the end of the day. But,
still alive. Yeah. She ends up getting most of them back against Shakan, where she shoves up Ace-7, even worse, against Shakan's queens, and that really cripples Shakan because we see him later on with very few chips. Andy Black, I think possibly the first person to cry at this main event.
Oh, yeah.
But at something that doesn't involve losing a hand. Like he cries that his tablemates did not know how long the break was, so he asked his tablemates to slow play down. He gets emotional. Now we learn about his background and we kind of maybe can sympathize with why he was like that. But very bizarre, and it does not end up helping his tailmate because he ends up busting relatively quickly after he comes back to the table. Yeah,
supposedly Bing Wang thought that it was an hour-long break. That was his name.
I'm sorry, I'm mature.
It's okay. Yeah, it's he thought it was an hour-long break. It was actually a 15-minute break, so he was gone for a while. And Andy Black was like, "Can we just wait until he comes back?" I mean, 45 minutes—that's a long time to just sit out.
I know.
So I mean, I understand that decision, but man, Black, it was a nice gesture,
and it definitely adds some personality to his story of the main event, for sure. Joe Hashem ends up joining the table, and then back-to-back shown hands gets aces. He wins both of them, but the key thing is that Carl Lopez, who had folded ace-queen the first time to Hashem's race of aces, ends up having this overly dramatic, all-in blow-up with queens, where he puts in 1 million chips in a 3-bet, where I could have sworn the 2-bet must have been like 100,000. So he's going from 30K blinds to like 100K to 1 million.
Yeah.
And then we got the infamous Aussie, oi, oi, oi chant from Hashem wins. But, I mean, you cannot play queens like that.
I know.
You just can't do it. With like 30-something players left, you just can't do it.
Just weird play.
Exactly. Bernard Lee, who was shown at the top of the hour, we learned about his wife's health and what the events transpired leading up to his entering the tournament.
Yeah, I mean, just like Josh Aria the previous year, having a sick wife who's, he's planning to stay behind. Wife says, no, go and win. And so he goes.
Yes.
Very interesting that happened again.
John Joanda ends up losing in 31st place. Was not really shown outside of the Paul Darton hand earlier in the coverage, but nonetheless, a very good run for a top pro at that time.
Of course.
Raymer ends up busting a Mr. Bhutan, who has potentially the most awkward laugh of all time. Raymer makes a joke when the cards are on their back, and he's like, yeah! And so Raymer wins another big hand, and then we are down to our final 3 tables.
Yep.
Again, I always love the final 3 tables onward of any main event. It's always every table gets sort of focus. You can switch the camera from table to table and kind of really get all the action. You see most of the eliminations at that point. And also it's usually the first time of the show that chip kind of every player left at that point.
Yeah,
that's very important because you want to. It's just kind of fun to see who and what chip stack got how far and how they progressed from the final 3 tables onward.
Yeah, I mean, there's just so much natural tension when you get down to 3 tables. It's good that we have Matusow, we have Ivy, we have Raymer, but we also have plenty of players that we haven't really heard about before. Good mix of pros and amateurs to see who's going to come out on top. Ivy comes in second in chips, Matusow, the chip leader.
With 27 left, Raymer also in 5th place. So again, those top pros we mentioned that we were happy to see, they all stayed at the top 5 of the chip count as 27 players left. So you'd think at least, 2 of them at the final table, I mean, 1 person missing the final 5, right? You'd think they're set for life here.
I mean, just imagine looking at the stacks that were left. Imagine you're in 05 and you're saying to myself, oh my God, it's going to be Matusow, it's going to be Ivy, it's going to be Raymer going at the final table. This is going to be so cool. This is going to be so great. And then this happens.
So this episode was, again, when I was a kid, watching this was one of my favorites of all time episodes.
Oh, of course.
I think it's still up there for sure.
Yeah.
In this case, it's really kind of 5 names are kind of the main. You have Ivy, Matusow, Shakan, Raymer, and Aaron Cantor are kind of the headline, the events episode for sure.
We do get quite a bit of Hashem in here, but yeah.
We do, but
those 5 are the best. Yeah.
And these are all very important names for their final table implications and for the next episode or 2 to come.
Mm-hmm.
Ivy begins off just in total overplaying meltdown mode. He loses almost $1 million to Andy Black in the very first hand. He then bluffs off another $500,000 to Hashem. Just unbelievably bad play by Ivy.
Yeah, and I mean, Ivy, Norm mentions this. Hashem shoves, and Ivy, turns his entire head and, looks at Hashem. He was just off.
Absolutely.
Just weird. I don't get
Very
it.
off.
Yeah.
In between, though, we do get the infamous Mike Matusow, Sean Shakan, and Michael Kessler hand, where Matusow is playing a hand against Kessler. Shakan hits the table with his hand. And I think he would have made 2 pair on the flop or something like that.
Yeah, I think he had ace 9.
Yeah, something like that. And then both get a penalty because Mike drops the F-bomb while Shakan's hitting the table is worth of a penalty. And it's important to note, though, that Shakan looked like last in chips at this point.
Yeah.
And Matusow was first in chips. Now, Matusow wins the hand. Great. They both go on a 10-minute penalty.
Yeah.
And Shakan, of course, has 9 big blinds, so that's a crippling sort of penalty, which he does manage to overcome, ironically.
Yeah.
But it would start off. It was really the round 1 of probably the only feud ever to last more than 1 episode in the history of the main event up until this point.
Just the best feud.
The best feud for sure.
So crazy.
And then so we do learn a bit more about Joe Hashem. We learn about his chiropractor background, where he lost the sort of ability to continue that job, so poker. His kids are home with the wife. And Joe Hashem, I will say, he definitely has the most main event success out of all the past champions because he does make a lot of fairly deep runs. He'll cash, I think, probably at least 5 more times after this year.
Yeah, by no means a luck box. He's definitely a good player.
There's definitely the pre-ego heavy Joe, though. He was definitely more arrogant in future years, though.
Yeah.
A little bit of that kind of shines here a bit, but for sure, going forward, he'll have that attitude for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I've read comments that are all over the map about him. Some people say, oh, he's a really nice guy, and then some people say that he, just screams at players at the table.
I mean, Helmuth is known as a nice guy.
Yeah,
so maybe he's in that same category for sure.
Yeah.
The blinds, where we see them, there are 20 and 1,000 and 40,000.
Right,
It's 4 buy-in stacks. And Matusow doubles up Shakan in what would be probably a really long-standing implication move because it would enable Shakan to really survive for a very long time in these tournaments. Shakan with queens, Matusow with 7 deuce.
And he does it laughing, joking, this is such a funny joke, and as you mentioned, it keeps Sheik in there longer.
And not to mention, he, of course, while mocking Shakan and himself, in a sense, he mocks Phil Hellmuth's book.
Right.
Phil's a good hand. I should have read that book, man.
Phil did play.
Andy Black does play a hand versus Raymer.
Yep.
He shows in Raymer. Raymer ends up losing the hand, losing some more chips. So, again, the narrative is kind of at this point, Raymer and Ivy losing ground. And Matusow, not really, but, you could technically say that, I suppose.
Yep.
Matusow ends up folded to Shakan again in the infamous Do You Want Action, Sean? Shiki. one action. And then Sheik, Sheiky was definitely out-talked by the mouth, but this has definitely got the better of him here because Matusow asked him, I'll call if you say you want action, I'll fold if you say you don't. So, of course, Sheik says, I want action, and Matusow folds. And then Sheikhan, again, just chipping up, very important. Every little chip counts for him because he'll end up busting a few players later on. So
right, exactly.
Big implications for that going forward.
Don't touch my money, Mike.
And then, again, probably the hand which earns him a nickname, Aaron Cantor, the nickname Giant Killer, ends up doubling up to Greg Raymer when he overplays basically a flush draw, but he had like queen high on the flop.
I'm just shaking my head here.
I have to call BS to ESPN here because they say that Raymer has 4 million chips at the start of this hand.
Mm-hmm.
When all the money goes in, we see the pot size in the corner. It says 3.5 million.
Yeah.
And Raymer ends in with like 400,000, which tells me that they must have thought the pot size plus what Raymer had combined was the 4 million because he must have he only could have had like 2.2 million for the math to work out.
Yeah, they screwed that up.
That was a big screw up for sure.
But still, that's that hand. Ugh.
So Sheikhan knocks out Tom Sartori in 26th place.
Yeah.
Bad sound editing. Yeah, ever since you mentioned the sound editing issue in 04, that was definitely a prominent issue for me a couple times. This was one of them.
Yeah, that was bad. Can't hear anything.
But then after knocking out one player, Sheikhan doubles up Bernard Lee, who celebrates pretty loudly.
And Matusow's happy. You can just see on Matusow's face. Oh my god.
Ihan Alsanjak, who made a decent run in 04, ends up busting Raymer, whose own table talk pretty much seals his own fate.
Yeah.
He basically gives away that it doesn't have a king, which you just can't do that with face high.
He was tilting. Like, you could tell after he busts, you can tell just in his face how disappointed he
goes
was.
out in 25th place. Yeah. Again, a very solid, 25th place out of 600.
Of course, that's impressive. Great. But
he was 5th in chips with 27 left.
Yeah, he's going to make the final table if he doesn't get unlucky there.
Mm-hmm.
Winning Cantor's chips, he's going to make the final table. You can just tell in his face and body language after that happens.
Now the show Ivy stack, let's say he's got about 3 million at this point. He began the day with 5 million, so again, almost half gone. Any black hits runner to knock out Tim Fan, who had never really gotten any focus, but was kind of a voice on the table during his time shown.
Crazy, yeah.
We do see Andy Black's background. He had made a deep run in the main event in 97, had kind of hit rock bottom, ended up turning to Buddhism to find sort of his spiritual self, and definitely seemed to have reformed his life a bit, and now finally putting himself in a spot to make it big as well.
Yeah, interesting foil to Mike, who also claims to have turned his life around, and interesting to see those two sort of editing styles clash.
Absolutely. And then we get a sort of a prelude to the final heads-up match between Hashem and Denneman. They play a big pot. Hashem flops a flush draw versus Denneman's flop set. A lot of table talk back and forth, a lot of laughing from Denneman. Always good stuff.
You're staring me down as if you got nothing.
But Hashem does make a pretty good read. You pretty much has to put him on a set to fold that.
Yeah.
So, again, very impressive stuff. Not the kind of good fold you see too often in 05, for sure.
Just incredible. He asks Denneman to check his cards again. He does it, wipes his brow, turns to Ivy and starts talking to Ivy. And Ivy actually says something. He goes like, I was doing all right when the day started. Which is crazy.
Exactly. And then, so Hashem makes a good fold.
Yeah.
It's, again, a very, very fun hand to watch. We do see a bit of a montage of eliminations coming down from the start of the day down to 21, because we're moving forward towards a very shocking elimination. We do first see Matusow once again doubling up the Sheik, who hits close to about 2 million, which is fairly substantial at this point, given the blind's probably around 2040 or 2550.
Yep.
And then Aaron Cantor versus Phil Ivy's wild card mystery hands.
Oh yes.
Ivy puts in what seems to be about 2.5 million with jacks, which I cannot stress is another awful play. He was clearly tilting.
Oh yeah.
Got one decent hand and overplayed it to the hilt.
Yeah.
That's at least probably 40 or 50 big blinds at this point.
Yeah, was it still 25-50 at this
point?
They
didn't share it, but it was somewhere in that. It was either that or 30-60 or something. That's still just, you cannot do that. And Aaron Cantor, of course, gets another huge elimination. He's building a big stack at this point. And with Ivy out, they then count down the final elimination down to 18. Min Lai, who was also kind of a notable name, by the way.
Yeah.
And we reach the final 2 tables. 18 players, but they sort of tease round 2 of Matusow Chacon, and they actually show a shove, like a little kind of not quite playful shove, but like a real shove, which unfortunately they don't actually show the context for later on. Like we don't see it ever again.
Yeah, I mean,
I would have loved to have known what that was about.
Yeah, I mean, Mike said, I think in an interview with somebody, did it ever get violent? He said no, so...
It must have been for the cameras.
Just for the cameras, it must have
been. Probably. So day 6, part 2, is when they go from 18 down to 9.
Yeah.
They actually they break new tables, and so they have 2 tables fresh, but they have to swap out because Matusow and Chacon have been on the outer table, so they put them on the featured table here.
Yep.
And this episode really kind of divided into 2 halves. One is kind of the Matusow Chacon narrative, and the second is Aaron Cantor just killing all these no-names that we've never heard of.
Oh, yeah, just crazy.
He gets 3 or 4 eliminations from these guys that we've never heard of.
Yeah, I mean, Hashem gets 1, and we forgot to mention this in the previous episode, is the Pass the Sugar Hand, where Hashem, doubles up through black.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, Cantor, wow. I mean, just what a run for this guy.
As you might have noted when you see the chip counts at the top of the hour, there's a pretty wide chip spread. There's clusters of chips are in the top few, and then a lot of really short sets, which is why we see so many Aaron Cantor eliminations, because they don't have enough chips to kind of...
Yeah, Hashem was second in chips at the start of this episode. I forgot that.
Matusow had 6.2 million, which is really only 1.2 million up from where he was at the start of the day. So again, he's chipping up, but he's not keeping pace with the lead he had to begin with.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we say goodbye to Alan Kessler right at the start of this episode. Seems like a really, sweet guy. He mentions, let's go party like rock stars, which is a great line. He busts against Lazar, who we'd seen a little bit of before, but this is also an episode where we start to get more of his character.
Absolutely. We do see Chacon folding correctly to Matusow, who had 5-4. Chacon had ace king. He, of course, folds saying, I had the best hand, Mike. I had the best hand.
And Mike goes, I just outplay you every hand.
Well, 100% had the best hand. Well, I guess 100% is not what it's used to. Williamson does bust in 15th. She gets a very substantial round of applause, including from Chacon, which I got to give him props for. At least he finally, he can own up to when someone does make an accomplishment that's worth applauding. Given their tussle earlier in the tournaments. So
I mean, he was playing it up for the cameras.
I'm sure he was, yes. As the blinds go up to 40 and 80K, Scott Lazar outplays Chacon at the same hand.
Yep.
Chacon loses half his chips basically at that point, which kind of would cripple him for the remainder of his time in the tournament.
Yeah.
Scott Lazar is shown, he's a magician. He was pretty prominent for a lot of celebrity parties.
Oh,
which, you wouldn't expect. You would think there's a lot of magicians in Las Vegas. Probably you wouldn't think this random schmo, but actually pretty impressive.
Yeah, and he's like a film producer too. He's got all sorts of different gigs. Crazy guy.
Yes. Once again, Cantor busts somebody in 14th. The pattern is always him kind of getting lucky on the river, so they kind of say, once again, on the river, and they're going to eventually give him another nickname towards the end here.
Yep.
We get some more lovely table talk from Sheik and Mike. And the Sheik, I mean, I know he's probably not a Native American, a native English speaker or something, so he can't quite respond as fluidly as Matusow can. This is like pre-speech impediment Matusow. Yeah. So Mike kind of gets more in edgewise than Chacon does.
This seems to be a defective tournament. You seem to be a defective
human.
Person.
Chacon does go all in with ace-7, and Daniel folds the ace-deuce, but Daniel does fit. You're a nice guy. You guys are all nice. And Matusow jumps in. I hate everybody, but I like you, which is ironic given what will happen later in the tournament.
Right.
Chacon, asks Daniel what he had with ace-deuce. I had the 2 of my ace. So there's no point in showing you.
He does get the great line, these guys can't fade me, which is just bragging. They're trying to kick me out. They give me penalties. These guys can't fade me. This is my tournament.
Yeah, his antics will definitely earn the moniker of a table talker for things like Poker After Dark and whatnot going forward. So definitely worthy for it for sure.
Yeah.
Aaron Cantor busts our Wayland, Massachusetts neighbor Bernard Lee on the river.
Yeah.
He, again, accumulated a lot of chips. We get Bergsdorf being bluffed off by Danneman, which again, only like the third hand we see Bergsdorf if one of 3 hands we see him in the entire tournament.
Yeah, Kondracki is just AWOL too. He's nowhere.
Yeah, exactly. And then Matusow ends up doubling up the Sheik once again, a small double up, but nonetheless another one where there's Ace Jack against King Queen.
Oh my God, the greatest hand. Just, oh my God. I mean, I'm a marketing writer for a living. I write all day. I wish I could come up with lines like, don't make 2 pair, that would suck. Just all of that. Oh my God.
I'm going to give you what you deserve. You got what you asked for, baby boy. What happened there? You got what you deserve, sucker.
And how he stands up when the flop comes and then sits back down, no change on his face.
Because he saw his gut shot for Matusow.
Yeah, and then when he finally does win the hand, he stands up, throws up his hands, and winks, just perfect movie star wink, and just screaming at Matusow. Oh my God.
Matusow does get a little bit of redemption. He does win a big hand against Lazar of Kings, but he can't contain his excitement. He flashes the Kings around in the room. Again, Kings against Lazar would be very lucky later on, though.
Oh, yes, the irony of that.
And then after hanging in there as a short stack for pretty much the whole day, Sheikhan goes out in 11th place. Ace-7 with 4 big blinds. Nothing you can do there. Matusow makes the nuts. And then Sheikhan actually hits the door on his way out. Literally, he bangs his fist on the door out in frustration, but I mean, he played pretty well, honestly.
Yeah, he hung in there.
$600,000 is on the sneeze out.
Yeah, and Mike shows the nuts, stands up, is throwing his arms up, running around.
You can win with grace sometimes, or you win like this. Again, this is really Norm had some great lines in this whole entire tournament. I gotta give him props for that.
He really stepped up his game. Yeah.
To be fair, the players did give him a lot of good ammunition, but nonetheless, for sure. Now, at this point, the blinds are at 50 and 100,000. Ivan also doubles up once. But despite doubling up once, he ends up busting in 10th place to Aaron Cantor on the river, where Lon says, I'm officially renaming the river the Cantor, which didn't stick, but nonetheless was indicative of his entire run. So Aaron Cantor accumulates a huge chip stack heading into the final table.
Yep, and one thing to mention is Black versus Barch. Black giving a lot of his chips to Barch, sort of a little foreshadowing of what's to come. Just everything in this. I mean, as you mentioned with the Kings versus Lazar, I mean, just everything. There's just foreshadowing for what's to come in the next.
And so this really brings us to the final 9. Yeah. And I would argue, of the final 9, we knew nothing about 3 of them. But that's Barch, Bergsdorf, and Kondracki. We knew nothing.
Yeah.
3 we knew very well. We knew Matusow, Danneman, and I guess
Black.
We'll say Black. And then 3 we kind of knew a little bit. We knew a little bit about Hashem, sort of. We knew a little bit about Lazar from the prior episode. And then Aaron Cantor we didn't really know. But he was a feature enough in his play where that sort of took more of a...
Yeah, Cantor we knew through his play. We didn't know about his personality.
Which I'm fine having that as a trade-off, but nonetheless...
Yeah, Hashem might say we got a couple segments with him. We got past the sugar. We got him explaining on his...
And a couple of hands. A couple big hands. So that's fair.
Yeah.
So the chip counts there. Matusow does begin the final table with 4th in chips, 7.3 million, which is 73 big blinds. So again, he was up from how he was earlier on day 6, but still not... we're getting comfortable.
Can I cash out?
Aaron Cantor in first place, obviously. Brad Kondracki towards the bottom there. So if the blind at just 1,500K, we have a cooler, as they say. Daniel of Jacks, Matusow of Kings, Scott Lazar of Aces. One player plays his hand very well, and one also plays it fine, and one plays it horribly. Danneman manages to correctly fold the jacks.
Yep.
And Scott Lazar ends up it all in against Matusow. Matusow in for 45% of his chips. Hits his Miracle King. He celebrates like crazy. Goes to a depressive funk on the turn when Lazar makes a flush draw. And then, of course, Lazar hits a Miracle River to... on the flush draw to double up, and Matusow loses almost half his chips, and but of course his rail told him incorrectly in the river, like, you misunderstood them, which is always funny.
Yeah,
so told me I got it, so I said he got it. So, and then it really did seem like Matusow was a goner at that point. Like, he still has a good, like, 4 million chips at that point. Now, in an interview relatively recently, we've talked about before.
Yeah, we have to clarify this misconception.
Matusow, as part of the Run It Back sequences at Poker Go on YouTube, he had mentioned, or not, also on his podcast too. He misquotes the numbers as far as how many chips he would have had had he won that Aces versus Kings hand. So Matusow had 7.5 million chips or so.
Yeah,
Lazar had like 3.5 million. So if Matusow wins that hand, he's going to have 11 million chips, which is 20% of 56 million.
Exactly. Yeah.
Matusow seems to think that if he wins that hand, he would have had like.
I would have had 75%
like,
of chips.
Like 75% of chips. Like, I have no clue how he got that number.
Yeah, he said in Run It Back with Renko, I would have had 75% of the chips left hand.
Like, I don't know why.
In his podcast, he would have had 80%. Now, he says something similar with at the 0-1 table when he got bluffed by Carlos. He said, like, what if I had, like, 90% of the chips left? So maybe he's confusing the two?
He has to be.
I don't know.
Like, maybe all the drugs and back injuries have clouded his memory. I don't know. Mikey, I love you, but, I mean, get the math right, okay? And, so, basically, Matusow has a lot of chips. Kondracki doubles up on a flip against Danneman.
Yep.
So he avoids being in 9th place. Matusow is at 5.5 million at the next time they display the chip count. So he actually bounced back a little bit. So it wasn't a total wash.
He managed to chip up,
But then he bluffs off 2 million chips so needlessly against Andy Black. And Matusow kind of downplays this mistake in his Run It Back with Remco.
Yeah.
But he had 9-5 on a Jack 10 something board or whatever. Like, Andy Black had 2 pair, and Black bets $1 million, and he raises it to 2 million. Like, that's valuable chips that you cannot be wasting.
Yeah, it's just stupid. And can we just talk about Matusow putting his hands on his chips like he's about to call Black's kissing him? Just so weird.
It's all good fun.
Yeah, it's great. I know, but oh man.
So with the blinds now increased, Matusow is down to just 15 big blinds at 1.8 million. He does outplay Danneman and Black with a bluff of 8 high.
Yep.
Which temporarily gets him into like 7th place on the chip counts. But then on the next hand, he's got fewer chips and Steve. So we're editing this down a little bit.
Yeah.
But they're definitely trying to lengthen out how much content with Matusow they could get before he busted. 9th, spoiler alert, Matusow ends up making a very similar call to the call he made against Raymer in the year prior, where he calls up a pair against basically a draw in overcards. And unfortunately, Matusow busts in what would have been a 5 million chip pot. So again, nothing that would have guaranteed Matusow advancing very, very far, but nonetheless, he goes up to 9th place, wins $1 million, his first of $2 million prizes in 05. Unfortunately, the 05 Tournament Champions, we do not have access to it on Poker Go, but he did win that. But as we have learned post-haste, Matusow blew through all that money very, very quickly.
And I mean, he mentioned later that he cried in the car on the way home, and I think he even said something like, if you play the main event final table like 10,000 times, I finished 9th once.
I mean, he's so arrogant. I mean,
he got unlucky.
He did, but he played some hands poorly too.
He played some hands poorly, sure. The $2 million that he gave away to Black, of course, but he should have finished in at least 7th, at least.
And now it's important to also note that, unlike 04, where the entire final table was compiled into one episode, the first elimination takes place basically at the halfway mark of this episode.
Yeah, we got a lot of coverage, which is good. I like to see that.
It's a little bit slower, even though it's really only 4 hands. 3 of them involving Matusow, basically. So after Matusow goes out, we do learn about Scott Lazar's drug and alcohol-fueled past, divorce, which kind of contrasts greatly with the whole magician aspect that we learned from beforehand. So we kind of see the good and the yin and the yang, which is kind of nice. I don't mind that.
Yeah, that's good.
Granted, he doesn't play very well the rest of the episode, but which doesn't putting in thoughts of drugs and alcohol to him bad correlation there, but nonetheless. So Brad Kondracki ends up losing a flip to Andy Black. That hand gives Andy Black a very large chip lead, which you'd think would, nail him down for the final three at the very least. You'd think that. You'd be wrong. Aaron Cantor plays a hand of Joe Hashem. He bluffs off Hashem, but Hashem did make a good fold in retrospect because of our pesky little rabbit cam telling us that Hashem would probably be out. If
Cantor would have hit the straight on the river, as he usually did, probably breaking the spell of the Cantor River there.
Yes. And then Cantor promptly gives those chips back away to Black because Black makes the infamous $5 million on top of that raise, where Cantor correctly folds the top pair against Andy Black's set, which, again, Andy Black, he goes big with his bets when it's just one of those times where he probably should have bet a little bit smaller.
Yep.
For sure. Tex Barch busts Bergsdorf in unlucky for Bergsdorf fashion.
Yep.
Bergsdorf again was shown maybe for all of 2 hands up to this point.
Yeah, Kondraty and Bergsdorf, we knew absolutely nothing about them. They're the Glenn Hughes of this time around.
Exactly. Yeah. We do get a return to the nuts with more of the flushies. These are a little bit better, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah.
It does highlight some notable things. The best first and last hand for Hudson. The best dress going to Sato, the Japanese game show winner. The worst use of a library card for Raymer Jensen, which again is a quirky way of putting it. And then Helmut's meltdown earning him the royal flush, of course, because, his meltdowns are legendary.
Of course.
And then basically the best episode of 6 players left. The 6 max, everyone kind of loves 6 maxes.
Oh, yeah.
It's basically the Scott Lazar horror show.
Oh, my God.
He folds Ace-5, which, again, I don't blame. Ace-5 is not a lock to play a hand when you're relatively low in chips 6-handed.
Yeah, exactly.
He would have made quads, and even though they kind of mention it, both Lon and Norman mention it, even Lazar kind of mentions it, how everything kind of changed for him in his head. He kind of went crazy from there. He calls Hashem's Ace-Queen of King-9, which is, again, a terrible, terrible call.
Yeah.
Loses like half his chips. And then the infamous quote, I'll give you a gamble, of Queen 10 against Andy Black's chips.
Queen 10 off, yeah.
And he knows instantly he grenaded it himself. He knows he blew it.
In the quad aces hand, right, Black raises 500K, Barch calls. He goes check, 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 check. Black bets 500K, Barch calls. It's not even like he would have won a huge, huge pot with quad aces. They were going to play it on the smaller side, so it's just so needless.
Right. And it's just crazy. You can't beat yourself up for folding when it's a good fold at the time. You can't do that to yourself.
Yeah, unfortunately, Lazar didn't have the greatest life after this, but luckily he's turned his life around with Hashem's help, apparently, so that's good to hear.
And so at the halfway point of the final table, we go from 9 down to 5 into part 2 of the final table. And on part we go, of course, we do get the commentary with the winner, but this time, actually, they do give us commentary with both Joe Hashem and Dan Mint, which is nice because, there's going to be hands where the winner's not always going to be a part of it.
Right, yeah.
But, I didn't find the commentary particularly insightful this time around.
Yeah, they were in 2 separate locations, Hashem and Daneman. If they were maybe together, hearing both of them sort of talk to each other, that would have been neat. But yeah, Hashem, first off, they're both reading off of a teleprompter very clearly. I get it.
They're not actors.
They're not actors.
They're not actors.
I'm Steve Daneman, and welcome to the commentary,
Yeah.
We get a little bit more about Hashem, but, Yeah.
And then, so this episode begins with the preparation of the money in these official cardboard boxes that end up being guarded by some guns. And I know that nowadays they just tape a couple $1 bills together and make it seem like it's bigger. So, but I do wonder back then, was that still was that real money?
I doubt
big bills.
I think it was just.
I don't know. We'll never know, I guess, for sure.
Supposedly, when they put all the stacks of money on the table started to buckle, so they had to get supports under it in order to prop it up, which is crazy. Yeah.
So with 5 players left, we have Andy Black with a huge lead, 20 million chips, which is, over 40% of the chips in play, I think.
He's going to win the final table 50% of the time.
And then Joe Hashem actually is in last, which, again, you got to flip those 2 stacks to be the final placement.
It's crazy.
Going forward. The blinds are 80K, 160K. We have 2 colors of chips here, just like last year at this point. The dark black and brown chips, and then the beige chips.
Mm-hmm.
Any black misses the whole cam for one of his cards. We never learn what the other card was. Even in the commentary, Hashem says we don't know what his other card was.
Right, yeah.
He loses 7.5 million chips to Cantor, which I have to assume is either ace, king, or aces. Like, I don't know what.
Yeah.
Hashem seemed to think it was ace 8, but I'm not convinced. I don't think it was.
Yeah, I mean, he had to have like trips or something. I don't know.
And then Joe Hashem makes a shove with ace jack. Danielman consults his notes. Again, just some great sort of table side sort of displays by Danielman where he reads up his rules. Play tight, there's nothing to lose, and it's only a small mistake to fold. And Hashem, of course, gets to see what Danielman folded and is upset at that.
He folds ace 10 to ace jack.
It's a good fold. It's a very good
It's
fold.
a great fold, yeah.
And then any black once again playing one-card poker against Danielman this time, actually. He makes a great call with top pair. Danielman hits a river 2 pair to take off another chunk of chips, 8 million chips apparently.
Crazy.
And Danielman explains he made that move because he wanted to apply pressure, which,
yeah.
Again, applying pressure for pressure's sake is not effective strategy. I think that's like an example of 05 poker being far too simplistic.
Yeah.
But it worked, and he was in silent, like just he sits there, hits the river, he just sits there, doesn't react. Would put Joe Stillman to shame with that reaction of just sitting there, not even saying a word or moving a muscle, really.
Yeah, I mean, he mentioned that he was excited, but he didn't want to rub it in
exactly
Black's face, which is totally fair.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then Aaron Cantor, with the money he won off of Black, of course, doubles up Tex Barch in a ridiculously overplayed King 5, like King 7 hands.
Crazy.
21 million, which is more than what any Black had to start 500 play.
Just crazy.
Joe Hashem wins a lucky flip.
Mm-hmm.
So again, we're still at 5 players at this point. We're still, everyone's, chips are just kind of moving around basically at this point.
Yeah.
We do hear more about the Ozzy, oi chants.
Mm-hmm.
And, I don't think it ever really caught on too much afterwards. Maybe it did a little bit for 06, but...
Yeah, I think it's just an Australian thing, so yeah.
Andy Black loses the remainder of his 20 million stack to start 500 play in a flip to Danielman. Ace King against 10s on the turn. Aaron Cantor, with some more lucky miracle magic, hits trip 7s against Tex Barch in an ace 7, ace queen hand. The last 2 7s in the deck, by the way. Hashem folded the 4th 7. Hashem finally gets it in bad and wins a lucky hand against Cantor with queen 7, suited against 9s. So at this point, again, the hands are just a lot of just all-ins and calls and doubles up for the most part. We do get, I think, the third and final time we have the "Tell Me Why I'm Still Crying Over You."
Yeah, pretty fun.
Not as memorable as 04 because Matusow's cry. I think that one was pretty darn good. But still, I always enjoy seeing that montage, even if it's a lot of no names in the montage.
Fun. I have a little fun with it. Yeah.
The blinds continue to escalate. We have Cantor shoving in 15 big blinds of ace 9. Pretty standard. I can't complain with that. Given all his bad play up to this point. Barch busts him with jacks. So again, Barch has winning all these big hands with that. But then ironically, he begins 300 play in last place.
Yeah.
He does make a 4-bet of ace 9 and ends up folding correctly to ace king.
Yep.
But then I think just kind of overly ambitiously shoves ace 6.
Yeah.
Into jacks and 7s.
Bad time to do that.
Leading to his elimination in 3rd place.
Yep.
And Tex Barch doesn't really appear in any future main event coverage, but he did win a bracelet a couple of years later, so he's not a complete no-name at this point. He definitely had some success after the main event.
Good for him.
So heads-up play begins, and at this point, the blinds have gotten to the point where only one color of chips are in play, the tan, beige, goldy kind of colored chips.
Yep.
And Danielman, as in line with last year's coverage, the loser of the heads-up match wins the first hand of the coverage.
Yep.
And then very next hand, it's over.
Yep. Well, heads-up lasted 4 hands, so.
Exactly. Danielman had mentioned I guess probably the one commentary part I appreciate was he took Chatson's hand before heads-up play began, saying, "I'm sure we'll go over 5 hands. Good luck to you." And again, a pair of aces and a straight draw. It's not a terrible spot heads up.
I would have folded.
But I feel like, given how the hand played, the raise, re-raise, count your chips, I'm all in, I would have probably not played it like that.
I would have folded. I'm sorry. I'm playing heads up for the World Championship. I'm going to be pedal to the metal.
But to be fair, it did have some pretty good table talk on the final hand.
Oh, absolutely. This was such an entertaining hand to watch.
Absolutely.
And supposedly Hashem was really talking it up, trying to get Daneman to call, and he asked for a chip count. Daneman's counting up the chips. Hashem stops and goes, stop, I'm all in. They cut that out. I don't know why they cut out the chip count.
I don't know. But
Daneman calls.
Been a very memorable last hand, more memorable than the previous two, because the last two were just kind of, ironically, a lot more all-ins, heads up the final hand would be, for the most part, a all-in pre-flop situation.
Yeah.
This was, again, another time where it was not the case. And in 03, 04, and 05, it was all a flop turn river.
Yeah, 03 was after the flop, 04 was after the river, and then this was after the turn. So yeah.
It's I guess.
And 06 was after the flop. So yeah.
And 07 I think was pre-flop.
Yep.
08 was on the river.
Yep.
Well,
yeah, we'll get to there later.
We'll put on the whole list, but nonetheless, that's kind of how it played out. And that brings us to the end. Hashem is crowned our $7.5 million champion.
Yep.
And little did they know that next year would easily dwarf the numbers set by 05.
Even though Hashem says that 05 was the peak.
I mean, 06 would be the final year where the main event's steady rising fields would continue because of legal out of the casino, outer casino sort of issues which would change things up. But that is 05, the ESPN coverage of 05.
Yep, Steve Daneman, right after he busts, goes and plays $5 craps.
So, it's funny. I almost kind of think that after, the quality of play compared to 04, there's some bad day one play for sure.
Yeah.
But I think that the later day play is worse in 05 than 04. As far as the decisions and the how the players play it.
I mean, we see so much from
even the
Black.
pros, even some of the pros play it poorly.
Yeah, we see so much from Black. I mean, the whole narrative of day 6, at least day 6 part A, is how bad Ivy's playing and Raymer busting.
And Aaron Cantor going
Aaron Cantor's just getting lucky, yeah. I agree with that assessment. Not to say that they played horribly, but I mean, for the most part, and it seemed to be, mostly premium cards where the big hands involve premium cards. For the most part, you would saw some guys like Luskin and Lane Flack trying to play the weak cards, trying to outplay opponents. But for the most part, still a premium card kind of show for the most part. And the irony is that Hashem wins with 7-3. Flopping his string.
Yes.
Being dominated 3-1, he wins.
Absolutely.
Crazy.
And besides that, again, we mentioned how the coverage very solid.
Yeah, I'd say so.
A few sound editing issues here and there.
Yep.
A couple of, again, chip numeric things faulty. Not as bad though, and definitely the blinds were priority to maintain as they increased for us to know as the viewing audience.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, on day 6 we do get all of the chip counts of everybody involved. Still would like more of that information, within a hand.
Yes.
How many chips people at least have at the start of the hand, if not behind at that moment.
And then a much better job at introducing the members of the final table to us in both their backgrounds and their poker play.
Yeah, I mean, I would have liked to have seen, obviously, Bergsdorf and Kondracki. But on the other hand, I mean, I like that they had Bernard Lee and Kessler and so on. It adds for misdirection, right? You don't know who's going to make
that
the table.
Plus, Kondracki and Bergsdorf got out in 8th and 7th place.
Yeah, it's hard to tell those guys' stories that people.
And they play 1 or 2 hands the whole final table. They go out in the last one. So
yeah,
you can't really ask too much for it.
Yeah, that's fair enough. Yeah.
And again, this 05 main event did show us some names that would be making deep runs in future years.
Yep, John Kalmar, Kelly Kim, obviously Matusow will be back.
Yes. Ivy will be back.
Joe Hashem will be back next
Joe Hashem will be back.
Yeah.
And again, a couple of, they weren't really given much focus, but I actually looked this up afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
Matt Dean made the money this year.
Oh, okay.
476th place.
Okay.
Jason Lester made 76th place.
Oh, good for him.
And so again, some players, I was surprised they didn't. It's so often that final tablists would be given sort of a small spotlight in oncoming years afterwards. They didn't do it this time, but it would definitely be a recurring thing going forward for sure.
Yeah.
So I guess comparing to 03 and 04, how does this all fall into your personal preferences as far as favorites, least favorites?
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking about this, and I would say 05 probably is my favorite of the three that we've seen.
I would agree.
Yeah, I mean, I really like, the colorful cast of characters we have toward the beginning of the broadcast.
I love the meaningful reigning champ run of Raymer.
Yep, Raymer's champ
That's always
run
fun.
was great.
I always like
Stinks how it ended, but, you can't change that, of course.
Yes.
Hashem, deserved winner. I mean, impressive how he rode the short stack to a win.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting to me because, Martin Jacobson in 2014 gets a lot of praise for that same thing, that he rode the short stack, picked his spots, and then managed to win. And Hashem, not that he's disrespected, but he doesn't really get as much press as Jacobson does, which I think is interesting. Even though I think he played well. Daneman also, he was good to see. I sometimes wonder, oh man, I wanted Daneman to win over Hashem. Because just to see, a goofy guy win the main event would be kind of cool. But yeah, I mean, Hashem outplayed him.
So, oh, yes, for sure.
Yeah. And, Andy Black was personable. And
this was the episode coverage that made me kind of this love-hate fan of Helmuth and Matusow. Because prior to this, I kind of hated it. I mean, 04, they were both present.
Mm-hmm.
But, again, the more time we spend with them, the more you can kind of get into either the love or hate camp for them.
Yeah.
Ivy, I'm a fan of it because it's just, when someone's the best, you kind of root for them by default.
Of course, yeah.
But, I mean, we didn't really see it, though. I mean, we didn't see him win a hand, from like a real hand ever.
And he's just not personable either. No offense to the guy, but,
right.
Or at least it doesn't come across on camera. Maybe he's personable when you beat him. Mm-hmm. But, yeah, I mean, as we mentioned, a few sound problems, a few areas where they could have done a better job showing the players as they actually, Cantor we get a lot about in terms of this whole River Magic stuff, but we don't actually get really who he is. Tex Barch. Hashem mentioned that he was a pretty good player during his run it back. Seemed like a lot of people had respect for him. He finishes in third place, and yet we really just don't get a good sense of his play either. But all in all,
except for the visor. It was a visor.
Except for the visor, yeah. But all in all, I'd say this is a very, very solid season. I don't know how you describe this on television.
That's fair, yeah.
And it's not my favorite of the entire... of everything that I've seen. 06 might be my favorite just for one reason only. But, 05 is a very solid. I mean, I remember this was, I think, the first one that I watched when I was a kid.
Yes.
I remember, asking you, I think, does Hashem win? I really like Hashem. Does Hashem win? You're like, yes, he wins. It was fun revisiting this season, going down nostalgia lane and just enjoying it as an adult.
For sure.
Yeah.
I'm very excited to get to our next topic, which will be the 2006 main event.
Woohoo!
Again, a record-setting main event, the top prize of all time still, after the main event, that is.
And at the time, $12 million put you at the top of all-time cash of all time.
Absolutely.
$12 million.
Absolutely. Yeah. And again, this 06 kind of marks the last year of the classic
mm-hmm.
era
mm-hmm.
of the coverage. Things would dramatically change in 07 across many levels, so I'm very excited to get to that part of the historical nature of the tournament. But for 06 will be the end of an era of sorts. And it sounds like it's going to be your favorite. I'm not quite sure for me yet. I'd have to really go through the whole thing and see how I feel about it. But 05 takes the gold right now.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we'll see what happens in 06.
Yeah, 06 is going to be fun. And, thanks for joining us. We obviously are aware of the WSOP online events going on right now. If you're playing those, best of luck. Not too much to really, Mike. I've seen a little bit of Mike Matusow play, and it seems like in the online events, he gets like a stack going, and then he has a blow up, and then he just doesn't able to pull it off.
Well, I mean, last night he was playing the $1,000 tournament, and he got 17th place, which is impressive. But with 18 left, he was 8th in chips. So
that's a shame.
I'll just tell you about all you need to know about his narrative. And again, we want to thank Daniel Negraenu for name dropping our YouTube channel on his last live stream, where he made third place in an online event. Again, we still welcome any people to join us for either talking about the main events, comments, questions, topics, anything you want us to talk about. We're happy to
suggestions for future episodes. We're cool. I mean, obviously, we're going to be doing the main event through the foreseeable future. If you want us to talk a little bit about like the online WSOP or something, we're happy to add like a little segment at the end. Whatever you'd like. Yeah.
Besides that. Thank you for listening. We've been the Two Fish at the Table podcast, and have a safe August. We're August 1st today.
Yep, we'll try to get the next episode out as soon as we can. We're trying to do like at least once a month or so. But I promise you this, listeners, I am clearing Jamie Gold's name. I'm going to do it. I'm going to prove to you how he's the best main event winner of all time, and he's a totally nice and reputable guy. I'm going to do it by the end of the next episode.
Well, hopefully, we'll see if Alan Cunningham, the player of the year in 05, can do anything about that, about the gold problem.
I'm clearing his name. I'm doing it.
Alrighty. Take care, guys. We'll see you next time.
Bye.